And we're back. Greetings, everyone. This is Lucian Vâlsan, broadcasting still from Cluj-Napoca, Transylvania. As always, alongside with me is Jon Gunnarsson and our producer James Huff, making sure everything works just fine. Greetings, Mr. Gunnarsson.
Good evening. How are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing great. I've had a very, very crowded week as I'm trying to put everything in order before I fly towards the east and drop out of the map. Um, so yeah, I've been working like a workhorse and probably even more than that in the last week. But other than that, I'm still doing fine, and I'm glad that someone made global warming great again, and the weather is again tolerable as opposed to insane.
All right, sounds good.
Aren't you gonna tell me how the weather is on your end? You're disappointing me.
Well, the weather in this end is also rather disappointing. I mean, it's kind of coldish, a couple of days of rain, but nothing too out of the ordinary.
Now,
It's
the only thing
really
that I
rather
appreciate is that
boring and drab.
yeah, well, if it doesn't rain and it doesn't snow, that's fantastic. I mean, if it's minus somewhere between -5 and +5, that's okay. But when it starts raining, that's when it becomes insane.
Yeah, I
Right.
don't like the rain at all.
All right. Let's start documenting the insanity for this week, I say.
Okay, let's get going with a piece from our friends at The Guardian. UK to censor online videos of non-conventional sex acts. Web users in the UK will be banned from accessing websites portraying a range of non-conventional sexual acts under a little discussed clause to a government bill currently going through Parliament. The proposal, part of the Digital Economy Bill, would force internet service providers to block sites hosting content that would not be certified for commercial DVD sale by the British Board of Film Classification, the BBFC. It is contained within provisions to the bill designed to enforce strict age verification checks to stop children accessing adult websites. After pressure from MPs, the Culture Secretary, Karen Bradley, announced on Saturday that the government would amend the bill to include powers to block non-compliant websites. In order to comply with the censorship rules, many mainstream adult websites would have to render whole sections inaccessible to UK audiences. That is despite the acts shown being legal for consenting over 16s to perform and for adults in almost all other liberal countries to film, distribute, and watch. Free speech campaigners label the move a prurient invasion into people's sexual lives. Quote, "It should not be the business of government to regulate what kinds of consensual adult sex can be viewed by adults," said Jody Ginsberg, chief executive of Index on Censorship. Pictures and videos that show spanking, whipping, or caning that leaves marks, and sex acts involving urination, female ejaculation, or menstruation, as well as sex in public, are likely to be caught by the ban, in effect turning back the clock on Britain's censorship regime to the pre-internet era. The scale of the restrictions only became apparent after the BBFC, which has since 1984 been empowered to classify videos for commercial hire or sale, agreed to become the online age verification regulator last month. A spokeswoman for the BBFC said it would also check whether sites host, quote, "pornographic content that we would refuse to classify." In making this assessment, we will apply the standards that we apply to pornography that is distributed offline, she said. If a website fails on either of these, age verification or obscene content tests, then a notification of non-compliance will be sent to the site. End quote. There is no definitive list of sexual acts prescribed by the BBFC, but many adult film producers who have worked with the regulator have been forced to cut scenes, said Cherry Barnett, a free speech campaigner and author of Porn Panic, which details the rise of a new pro-censorship movement in the UK. Quote, "Although it is nominally designed to enforce the Obscene Publications Act guidelines of the Crown Prosecution Service, in practice it draws far tighter lines, many of them inexplicable. The ban on female ejaculation is a particularly strange example," he said. "The censorship regime has led to bizarre understandings between the producers and regulators," Barnett said. "One is the four-finger rule, which limits the number of digits that can be inserted into an orifice for sexual stimulation. Even so, Even some who back age verification question such strict censorship. It is mad that we regulate such material that aren't even criminal acts, said Professor Claire McGlynn, an expert on pornography laws at Durham University and co-founder of the Center for Gender Equal Media. If we are regulating things like menstrual blood or urination, that's detracting from a focus on what I think is really the harmful material, not material around child sexual abuse, but also around sexual violence, she added. There has been no discussion of the censorship provisions of the Digital Economy Bill by MPs during its committee stage, where debate is largely focused on age verification rules, but sources within the adult industry seemed aware. A spokeswoman for MindGeek, one of the world's biggest pornographic website operators, said the company expected that structures would be created to, quote, maintain the rights of adults to view adult content. She said it was too early to say whether the same CPS guidance would be in place for the Obscene Publications Act by the time the bill becomes law. Quote, many of the sexual activities prohibited from R18, the BBF's most explicit certification, are normalized and accepted aspects of healthy sexuality and are proudly celebrated by the feminist, queer, and ethical porn movements internationally, she said. Neither the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, which drafted the bill, nor the BBFC would comment on suggestions that censorship should be could be relaxed. A spokesman for DCMS said the government's aim is to ensure that the same rules and safeguards that exist in the physical world also apply online. Quote, DCMS has recently indicated that it intends to designate the BBFC as regulator and is considering the most effective way to implement these measures, he added.
There are no effective ways to implement these measures. Case closed. Next.
So here we have effectively censorship from 1984, literally.
Sounds lovely, isn't it? This idiocy should be placed into proper context. We're talking about Airstrip 1 here, formerly known as Great Britain, generally just Britain because it has been great for years. It's also the place that recently passed one of the most draconic surveillance laws in humanity's democratic history, which basically forces internet service providers not just to remember traffic details for a while about of its subscribers, but also to remember and keep for up to 1 year the browsing history of every subscriber and the bookmarks of every subscriber and a whole plethora of other things, and also empowers the GCHQ. I don't know what the official name is, but basically the secret services to run what they call device interference, which is basically to hack into anyone's devices at any moment for whatever reason. There doesn't even need to be a reason, just because the government feels so. So what I'm trying to say here is that the progress of censorship is going strong in Airstrip 1.
Yeah, it is really a very worrying trend, and I mean these rules these particular rules just seem so silly and
not only they're silly,
really
but
arbitrary.
they're already a quote unquote tradition. Because if you remember, 2 years ago we mocked almost an identical set of rules when Britain banned the production of various types of porn in the country, and we were talking at that time, if you remember, that most of the studios will move to either Amsterdam or Budapest as a result. And I know of at least one porn studio in the United Kingdom that actually did move to Budapest because a friend of mine intermediated the corporate move. And they moved precisely because of these rules. They're producing very wacky content that has its own niche, and it has its own customers, and basically their business became illegal under these rules 2 years ago in Britain. So as a result, they moved to Budapest. But now not only they're expanding on that ban, basically on the distribution of such content, not just the production of it, because apparently that was very easy to go around, and well, whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's not really surprising, and the rules about the banning female ejaculation and what's there the forefinger rule, the urination, and all of those. All of those were existing in that bill as well that banned the production of such content. So
Yeah.
uh, what's even more interesting is that because that such content is already banned from being produced in Britain, that means any new content created like this has to be created somewhere else and not inside the borders of the United Kingdom. So that means they'll try to enforce one of their own stupid rules upon foreigners who don't even live in Britain. Good luck doing that online. I'm not convinced that can be done.
Yeah, that's going to be tough for them. One thing I remember from that old law was that it banned porn displaying aggressive whipping, which I always found quite funny. So basically now porn in the UK can only show defensive whipping. Um,
Yeah, there we go. It was almost 2 years ago, December 2014. I found the article. It was even bookmarked in my browser. I think I should reinstall my operating system if it still has so very old bookmarks. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, the old list goes as follows: spanking, caning, aggressive whipping, penetration by any object associated with violence, whatever the hell that means, physical or verbal abuse, regardless if consensual, urolagnia, known as water sports, role playing as non adults, physical restraint, humiliation, female ejaculation, strangulation, face sitting, and fisting. So that means all feminist porn is banned. Um, but yeah, I'll place the old link from 2 years ago in the chat room as well for
I
anyone.
think pegging is still allowed, so the feminists have that one out.
Yeah, yeah. So it's still really not that bad for feminists. But yeah, I dug up the old link. So this particular bill basically takes the list almost ad literam the list from that particular bill and expands it on distribution. Now, whether that's moral to do so or not, I think it's self-evident. It's insane. It's who the hell cares? Why should the government give a toss about what adults are watching? I mean, really?
Yeah. Also, this list, I mean, this old list and this new list, they seem so incredibly arbitrary.
Yeah.
Um, it's not something that can be justified by protection of children or something like that, or from I mean, if they had focused on just violent porn, then I would still, of course, be against that. But I still, at least, I could sort of understand where they're coming from. That they have this idea that watching violent porn will then turn people um, towards committing sexual violence. I don't think that's likely or that's true, but at least it would be sort of a coherent theory that would explain these prohibitions. But things like female ejaculation, urination, things like that, how do you justify that? That seems really, really weird.
Well, I think the real justification is it's gross. We don't want it there. And
Yeah,
I agree. I agree. It's gross, but that doesn't mean I should have the power to censor it for those who do want it.
yeah.
And the four-finger rule is just
Three
why
fingers are
four?
fine. Four is sort of on the limit. That's pushing it, but five, no. Then that's beyond the pale. For
Yeah,
functional
why
purpose.
four? Why not six? Why not three? I would love to see someone trying to make a political explanation of why four, while having to describe why you shouldn't be grabbing her by the pussy with more than four.
See.
Amazing. It's interesting that we have someone from the Center for Gender Equal Media. This is an institution. First time I hear about it. I had no idea such institution even exists. And we've been following feminist establishment in Britain for years now, but this is the first time we encounter this particular institution. And it's interesting. It's a professor at the university, an expert on pornography laws. That's very interesting to know what taxpayers' pounds are being used to pay to experts in pornography. That's very reassuring indeed.
I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with being experts on pornography law.
Yeah, I know, but why should there be a pornography law? I mean, it just boggles my mind. There should be no such law other than the contract law. Was The material consensual, yes. Okay, then that's it. If it's not, then it's under contract law. There shouldn't be pornography law.
Yeah, but then if you go by that standard, then lots of types of law shouldn't exist, or lots of types of lawyers shouldn't exist. So
Yes, yes, I want you all fired.
okay.
There is something that I wanted to touch upon then before moving on. There is one portion where it says that it's something that we would never license. Where the hell is it? Uh, where this institution that
It's a third paragraph on the bottom on the first side. A spokesman for the BBFC said it would also check whether sites host pornographic content that we would refuse to classify.
yeah, they would refuse to classify. Why is that? I mean, why should there be material that you would refuse to classify that doesn't? That again, it's not child porn. It's not something built using slaves or something that could reasonably justify such a policy. But otherwise, why you wouldn't?
I guess it's just basically Puritanism.
Yeah, and
You
what's
hope
even
somewhere
more,
that someone somewhere might be happy
yeah,
or
and what's
jerking
even more,
off.
think about it this way: how many porn watchers would this institution, the BBFC, would have to hire in order to vet all the something like a billion porn websites that exist on the internet? You'd have to hire someone to watch not only those 1 billion websites, but also to watch many other porn light websites to see whether they actually cross the regulations or not, and if they
and, and
do, to
and
what extent.
of course you would need someone to count the fingers.
Yeah, and someone to count the fingers, and then again you enter into this business of there's porn on Twitter, and it's rarely if ever banned. I mean, there's porn actresses, porn actors who put pictures of themselves and clips of themselves on their accounts, and the network not only turns a blind eye to it but actually encourages them to do it in certain moments. Of course, that unless they happen to have voted for Trump, in which case they no longer have an account. But otherwise, if they had no political opinions in the last 3 months or so, they still are there, and they still post pornographic images. What would the government will have to hire people to just scroll Twitter constantly and report those images, or block Twitter from Britain, Erdogan style, like in Turkey? It's just the whole idea is insane, just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And again, what if the workers that they hire, because they'll have to hire, if this thing becomes law, they'll have to hire extra people just to watch porn. It's really that simple. What happens then? I mean, if that were to happen, I would apply for a job there, and then the second day I would just file for sexual harassment because someone jerked off next to me. I mean, turn the rules against them. That's the only solution that I can imagine. When such retarded laws are being passed, the only thing that comes to mind is how to use it against the rulers. I mean, you passed your rules. I'm going to force you to play by your own rule book, because nobody can play by their own rule books. It's really that simple.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they have some sort of automated way of judging whether something is likely to violate their rules, but it's going to be quite tough to do that.
There is no such automatic way. Facebook can do it. Twitter can do it with budgets, and especially Facebook with huge amounts of shekels spent precisely on this, and they still can't do it. Google can't do it. What makes the state of Britain, or any state, any government for that matter, more competent in this than companies that have a vested interest to do this? So yeah, and again, let's assume they put some half-baked algorithm to do this for them. It still doesn't explain what happens when there are false positives, which there will absolutely be. Then you'll have another bureaucracy to deal with appeals to the measure. I mean, the whole thing is just absolutely insane. Speaking of which, Daily Wire, which is Ben Shapiro's website, has been flagged as an adult website by certain by certain networks in Britain, and Daily Wire, for those who don't know, is a conservative website, but it's by far the most vanilla thing you can imagine. I mean, there's more uh, obscene things on CNN than on the Daily Wire. I mean, they ban you forever for saying fuck in the comment section. It's really that simple. And even if you're a paid subscriber, if you curse in the comment section, you're out. That's how puritanist Daily Wire is, and it's flagged as an adult website. So I don't know. I'm not convinced. Not only I'm not convinced that this would work, but I'm convinced this would do significantly more harm than any good, whatever the good is that the legislators have imagined.
Yeah.
Oh, let's not forget us. VoiceForMen.com are also declared a website, an adult website. In certain networks in Britain, you can't really access voiceformen.com from I think O2 on mobile or something like that. There are a few, one or two networks that still don't allow us to be viewed by the special snowflakes that are O2 subscribers. So yeah, apparently Google AdSense is fine with us, but not O2. Let's go to the next one. From one insanity to another, for crying out loud. Coming from the Independent, men call Sweden's mansplaining hotline to mansplain why they don't like it. Men have been calling a dedicated mansplaining hotline to ask for tips on how not to be sexist, as well as to mansplain to call handlers why the scheme is a bad idea. Unionen, that is Sweden's largest union, ran the advice line throughout last week. It encouraged women to call up when male colleagues gave them unsolicited and patronizing lectures on things they already understood. It was part of a campaign to highlight and stamp out the insidious and damaging practice of mansplaining, which the organization said can lead to unequal pay. But although they sought publicity, the union, which represents around 600,000 people, told the local it was surprised when the story was picked up by national newspapers all across Europe. It seems the concept struck a chord with women globally and touched a nerve in many men. Now, what was it newspapers across Europe or across the world? Because I pretty much think that women in Central African Republic don't really give a shit. But anyway, perhaps as a result of the attention it received, some Swedish media outlets claimed the line was dominated by angry male callers. One operator reported most of her calls were from men who wanted to tell her why mansplaining was a bad term to use, how the campaign was bad, and how it should have been run instead. Many of our calls, unfortunately, are from men who talk for a very, very long time. Seher Ilmaz, a volunteer call handler, told Arbetsvalen. Seher Ilmaz, that's very Swedish. It blocks the line and makes it impossible for other people to come forward. But Unionen spokesperson told the local that this was not the case. Some of the men who called were actually looking for guidance on how not to mansplain, a spokesperson said. Of course, lots of cucks in Sweden. Our mansplaining campaign has attracted engagement from both men and women. Gabriel Vedsted from Unionen told the local. Many women who rang in have felt that someone finally put into words what a recurring experience in both their working and private lives. He added, quote, the men for their part have been both curious about the concept they were not aware of and annoyed about a concept they see as discriminatory. Some men also wanted to get tips on how you can avoid mansplaining. Mr. Venstead also said that although the organization was surprised by how far news of their campaign had traveled, it was pleased. We knew, of course, that it would spark a debate, but never that it would go all the way up to the CNN, the BBC, and the New York Times. He said, the concept of mansplaining has a bit of an unexpected angle, and it also provokes and provokes discussion. We think that's good. That's the point of the campaign, that the question takes on a life in the workplace. Skipping a bit, the hotline advised upset and frustrated callers who have been victim of a mansplainer on what action they should take next and try to help them move on. Although many women said the line was useful to them, it was also widely criticized, mostly by men. Posters on the Unionen Facebook page argued that it was polarizing and negative, and even that using the term mansplaining in the name is sexist. Female journalists who covered the issue were abused by male trolls on Twitter. They had to put that in there, couldn't they? But Unionen remained defiant, saying it was important to look at historical structural inequality in society. Here's that word again, structural. Skipping a bit more, Unionen said the negative responses were unfortunate and the campaign was not intended to make men feel guilty. Of course it wasn't. Our goal has never been to single out or make all men guilty, but rather to raise awareness about the mansplaining phenomenon, harassment and discrimination in the workplace, Mr. Venstead said. Our purpose was to stimulate discussion in workplaces and in society, and I think we have succeeded in that. Close quote. Wow. I'm surprised that there was even one serious call. I mean, our fellow Swedish trolls haven't been working it hard enough. You should have kept the entire line 24/7 for the entire period busy with trolling them, like nonstop. Why not? This is insane.
Yeah, I mean, even from their perspective, shouldn't the fact that most of the callers were either trolls or men asking how to not to mansplain, shouldn't that sort of give them pause that maybe this problem of mansplaining is not as widespread as we thought?
That would have meant they would have to put in some thinking into it. And thinking is patriarchal and mansplaining, by the way. Amazing. I mean, I'm surprised that there are so few people who mock this thing. I mean, this is the kind of thing. This is the kind of retardation that should be laughed at indefinitely forever till the end of time. And any individual seriously associated with this should be a priori shunned. Like, you worked for the Mansplain Project, get the fuck out. Get out. I don't want to see your ugly face. No one should take this seriously at all for any reason. There is no serious angle to this story other than it is a very dangerous precedent and a very dangerous and sexist and insane idea, and sexist on both counts. Again, I mean, the whole point of mansplaining is the assumption that women are children and can't deal with the commentary they don't like, and they have to call in mommy to report about the commentary. Mommy, Bill told me something bad at work. Where? I mean, these guys. This is what these people really believe from the Union and whatever. That's what they believe about women.
Yeah, mommy, Billy told me something I already knew. The horror.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Also, the thing that, oh my god, the female journalists that covered the issue were abused by male trolls on Twitter. Actually, that's not true. Oh, well, I'm sure you're shocked about that. The only female journalist that covered the issue that was abused by male trolls on Twitter were the two girls from Göteborgs-Posten who covered the issue by saying that it's insane. And they got a lot of abuse on Twitter from feminists for saying that the whole idea is insane and the waste of union members' money, and the whole discussion on mansplaining is retarded and so on. That's how they covered it on Göteborgs-Posten, and as a result for that, they did get a lot of abuse. So yeah, female journalists who covered the issues were abused by trolls, both male and female, but it wasn't the way feminists would think it would go. It was exactly the opposite. It was them lashing out at normal people, saying this is insane.
Yeah, but the journalists were female, so therefore they were on the feminist side. Obviously,
I would challenge these journalists to tell that
feminism represents all women, right?
Yeah. This is the best. If you want to get, again, I told you my favorite female journalists from Sweden is Alice Teodorescu. If you want to get her to scream at you, tell her she's a feminist. That's the best way. or tell her that you represent her as a feminist. That's the best way to make sure that she'll scream at you. Because, I mean, if you can tell her that her mother is a whore and she'll probably not bat an eyelid. But if you tell her she's a feminist, she really takes that as an offense, as a personal offense, because she thinks feminism is a mental disorder. So, so yeah. Amazing, amazing, absolutely amazing, and it is indicative of. I don't want to say. Well, actually, I do. It is indicative of a cucked society. It really is. I mean, the fact that this thing is not universally mocked, it says something about those who don't mock it. Basically, I think it's a moral obligation to mock such things. I mean, any attempt to treat it seriously is in itself indicative of a bad character of the one trying to treat it seriously. Come on.
Yeah, it is really quite ridiculous.
Yeah, and again, one of the ways normal people can and should fight against it, besides trolling it into oblivion, of course, is if you're a member of Unionen, stop being a member of Unionen. Don't give them their shekels, because Sweden is full of these unions, but it's not the way the United States understands as a right to work state versus a union state. It's more or less. I mean, the being part of a union is still mostly optional, and definitely being a member of Unionen is not mandatory. And if you're a normal person, being a member of Unionen, please stop being a member of Unionen. This is insane. I mean, if they, and this is true of any institution, once they step into the social engineering type of behavior, that's the moment you should vote against them with your wallet. It's really that simple.
Yep, and once people start doing that in larger numbers, then they'll stop.
Yeah,
Because even if they are ideologues, they still don't want to throw away their money.
yeah, and with a private union, even a big one, it's still about the bottom line. At the end of the day, it still has to make some profit, or at the very least break even. And losing even 10,000 members can create quite an imprint on the organization. Of course, this one is very big. Unionen is a really, really big monster. I mean, it has 600. It has more than 600, almost 700,000 workers. Actually, the 600,000 figure is outdated. But anyway, considering that this is a country of 9 million people, of which only 4.5, most likely even less than that, actually work. So they have more than than 1/8, 1/7 of the total workforce. So it is quite a big monster, but nevertheless, it can still be affected, even if only a small portion of their members decide to vote with their wallets against them.
Yep.
All right. Sticking around in Sweden, coming from Dagens Juridik, which is sort of a publication that writes about judiciary. Woman sentenced for lying about rape. The man had recorded the encounter. And please, any young man listening to this, please listen to this article very carefully. The 22-year-old woman claims she was forcibly taken to a restaurant toilet. The man she had sex with, however, had recorded the intercourse, and the recorded was presented to the district court, and it proves that the woman's allegations were false and it was a voluntary sexual intercourse. The woman was now sentenced for filing a false accusation. The woman was prosecuted at the Stockholm District Court. According to the indictment, she had lied during multiple police interrogations in November 2013 and in October 2014 when she accused the man of raping her. The background was that the woman and the man had met at a restaurant in central Stockholm in November 2013. They did not know each other previously, and the next day the woman went to the hospital and told the doctors that she had been the victim of a rape by two men in the restaurant's toilet. She maintained the same story during the police questioning as during the hospital visit and a year later. The woman pointed out the man's Facebook profile on the internet, and both his identifying data and the DNA proved to be a correct match. The man candidly admitted that he had intercourse with the woman, but claimed that it had been entirely voluntary. He could also present an audio recording of the evening in question. When the woman was confronted with the transcript, she maintained her story that she had been raped. The rape charges were dropped, and the woman was prosecuted for false accusation. Stockholm District Court says now that everything indicates that it really was a voluntary sexual intercourse. The court writes, quote, There is no room to draw any other conclusion from the evidence available other than that the two people seem to have had consensual sexual intercourse. The court notes in particular that the two parties have a playful tone and are in a good mood. It is therefore no room to say that any of the parties were remarkably drunk, even if something seems to spill out and that the female voice then says that the other owes her a drink, close quote. As for the background of the recording, writes the district court, quote, as to why Ma, which is the code name for the male party in this case, recorded the intercourse, he stated to the court that he had a hunch that it was best to record what happened. Ma has also stated that he used to record important conversations and that there is much talk about men who can be accused of rape, and why, for reasons of precaution, it is good in itself to document such encounters, close quote. The court believes that the man has left a credible and detailed story about the incident, whilst the woman has left the details vague, stating that she has large memory gaps from the evening. She refuses, however, to admit to the crime and says that she has not pointed to any specific person as being the rapist, but she just told the authorities that she has been raped. The court writes X, that is the accused, has stated that she only left the descriptions of the two men she saw when she was allegedly being raped. X has also told to the police that she was dazed by the visit to the South General Hospital, which is why she does not fully understand what was happening. The district court, however, understood that X was aware that evidence collection was carried out and that she took part in a police interrogation. In addition, X stated that she had a friend request from someone who later turned out to be Ma on Facebook, and she sent it to the police to facilitate their work with the notification and to see if they could get some hits, close quote. The court states thus that it is proven that the man and the woman had a voluntary sexual encounter and that the allegations of rape are false. And here comes the insane part. The court believes however, that it may indeed be true that the woman believed she was raped. The court points out here that she told about the alleged rape in a very emotional way. The district court therefore considers that it is not proven that she had intentionally lied during the interrogation. However, the woman, according to the court, realized the risk that her allegations were false when she was at the hearing almost a year later when confronted by the man's audio recording. Since she nevertheless has maintained the allegations, she is sentenced for false allegation with a suspended sentence and 70 points of fining, which is almost 5,000 svenske kronor, and she must also pay 15,000 svenske kronor in damages to the man. Always be recording.
Yep.
I mean, really, this guy's lives would have been completely fucked without that audio recording.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he probably I don't think he would be sentenced because there wasn't any evidence.
There was DNA
But
evidence.
yeah, I mean, any evidence of the encounter being non-consensual.
Well, she says so. This is Sweden. She says it was unconsensual. There's DNA. There you go. That's enough to send a man in jail in Sweden. Without the audio recording, he would be in jail right now. It's really that simple.
Okay. I don't know how insane Sweden is, but
it's Sweden. Take an educated guess. Amazing. I mean, this is the kind of environment that Sweden is. I mean, if you don't have a recording, you can be fucked. I mean, she went straight to the hospital the next day after the encounter, had a rape kit evidence collection taking place, then went to the police. She did everything by the book. And when you show these, and then, the next day the guy sent her a friend request on Facebook. He identified him. There was very little wiggle room without the audio recording. It's really that simple. It was very, very little wiggle room. And in a he said, she said case, she's always right because she has a vagina. That's Sweden. And that's almost all countries that are infected with feminism. That is to say, almost all countries.
Yeah, I don't know if it's really that bad in most countries, but I mean,
well, unless you're in Qatar or in a Sharia court where you might have some wiggle room, But otherwise, yeah, no, they tend to listen and believe. Sadly, that is the case. In this country, for instance, if you have a female judge, with such a story, you get away scot free immediately because female judges are a lot less likely to trust sobbing young women. But if you have a male judge, the whole chivalry thing comes into force, and you're toast. And in the United States, until DNA thing emerged, how many men were sentenced to very long sentences for alleged rape, even when they hadn't even had sex with the alleged victim? But in this case, where the sexual act did occur, it's it's very hard to prove that it was consensual unless you actually have a recording of the event.
Yeah, of course you shouldn't.
In Britain, they also have and in the United States, these rape shield laws, which again means she's right because she has a vagina. Uh, and sadly, through the Istanbul Convention, more and more of these nonsense, this retarded nonsense, is being introduced into more and more courts. Sure, it's still not everywhere, but it's in more places than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, quite sad, really. Because the thing is, you shouldn't have to prove that it was consensual. It should be on the other on the prosecution side to prove that. But yeah,
no, I completely agree with you. Morally, this is reprehensible, but sadly, we've ceased to live in a moral world for decades now. Feelings matter a lot more than even the law itself. Um, and I mean, come on, what was that case in Germany? Heidi Kurz,
Heidi
pretty much,
Klum,
yeah, pretty much same thing.
was Arnold, yes, but that was really I don't think that's a typical case in any way.
No, it's not, but it happens. It
It
happens,
happens, of course, it happens.
and if the accused in that case, I don't remember his name, and I don't have to. If the accused in that case had recording, he would have gotten away easier.
Yeah, but in this case, it was really the whole story that she told was very implausible, and that was really a case where just the way it was described really anatomically would be very unlikely to actually be possible, and so that was just a real fuck up of the justice system, and uh, can't be explained simply in terms of believing the victim. It's just it's a whole other level of incompetence.
Fair enough. Here's another example. That chap who was also at the ICMI. I keep forgetting his name. That he was accused by that Game of Thrones actress, that African girl, for allegedly molesting her in the metro station,
Yeah.
with everyone watching. Even if he had been a time traveler or something, a time lord, it would still be impossible what she described. But nevertheless, the Crown Prosecution Service was very willing to believe it and take it to trial, and even tampered with the evidence. Thank goodness that they still have open trials for these things. And the whole evidence, which again consisted of CCTV footage, without the recording, he would have gone to jail. These are the times we live in. Same thing in Norway. We've read 2 episodes ago the workers from the kindergarten who are very happy to have peephole cameras and all sorts of insane surveillance, just so they can be sure not to be falsely accused of any sex crime. These are the times we live in. It's insane, but the alternative is significantly worse, which is to assume that people have common sense and assume that women are not weaponized by a radical misandrist political ideology, and that they will fuck you over.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the vast majority of them are not that way, but there are some, and
Some is enough. Some is enough.
that is enough indeed.
I mean, again, this guy was one of us, basically, a paranoid, always be recording. I mean, the court explicitly documents that he generally tends to record most encounters with of any kind, and considers to be a good a precaution, good in itself, to document any sexual encounter. I mean, that's the court writing it. It's not an opinion on a blog or something.
Yep.
Amazing. Right. Staying in the area of dubious claims of sexual crimes, let's go to the next one. Coming from Deutsche Welle, but it's still in Scandinavia, in Norway. Police crack down on Norway's largest pedophile abuse network. Norwegian police investigating a pedophile ring have arrested 20 people and identified 31 others as suspects. At least one suspect acknowledged abusing his own children. Deputy Police Chief Gunnar Fløystad said on Sunday that 20 men have been arrested so far in western Norway with 3 convictions. There are 31 suspects in different regions. Fløystad told reporters that many of the suspects were highly educated and include lawyers and politicians. He said he could not reveal more details pending the conclusion of the investigation known as the Dark Room, which began in 2015. Police seized 150 terabytes of material depicting many forms of child abuse, local media reported. Prosecutors said the perpetrators met on the dark web using encryption and anonymity to hide their tracks. Norwegian tabloid Verdens Gang reported one of those arrested was a police officer. The investigation began after information was shared from a 2015 FBI case, which involved hacking many dark web sites and discovering the identity of their user.
Another one of those.
Another one of those, yeah. I made a video about this, so there's something on my channel about this where I explained a little bit why, when you look at this in a historical context, the likelihood of this thing to even be remotely as serious as the press communicate looks like is statistical zero. That would mean Norway is a uniquely pedophilic nation in comparison to everyone else. I mean, it's just not possible. So there's that. On the other hand, I don't like this vague language. Police seized 150 terabytes of material depicting many forms of child abuse. What's that? The video that I watched on Daily Mail with the Texas mother throwing away her son because her son voted in a mock election for Trump at school, that's material depicting child abuse. Does that make one a pedophile?
Yeah, there's a lot of material which depicts child abuse in some way or form, but that doesn't mean that you're a pedophile for owning it or watching it.
Yes, and another aspect that lights up my bullshit detector over 1,000.
It's over 9,000.
No, this is only over 1,000 because I kind of expected. Here's why. It involves, where is it? The perpetrators met on the dark web using encryption and anonymity to hide their tracks. 50 euros bet that this will mean more anti-encryption and anti-anonymity legislation 5 years down the line. Because this is what usually happens whenever there is a pedo hysteria. If it pans out, that is to say, if they find 1 or 2 legit pedos, and they manage to whip up a little bit of a hysteria in a society, which in Norway is a lot easier to do than many people imagine, then usually after that, and this applies in other countries too. It happened in the United States. It happened in Sweden. It happened in Czech Republic, so it's really not that a Norway specific thing. Once the hysteria is being whipped out and everyone believes, even for just a few months, it doesn't have to last very long. I mean, in the US, it lasted for several years, but it doesn't have to last that long. If it lasts 3 months, it's still enough. If you have a small period of time when a significant chunk of the community believes there's a pedo behind every bush, then that's a very good moment for totalitarian politicians to push for legislation that has effects that have nothing to do with protecting children from abuse, such as legislation to regulate or even outright ban VPN encryption tools and things like that basically allow individuals some level of privacy in the face of government surveillance. A previous such hysteria has brought in those insane and vague quote-unquote child porn laws that now eventually end up criminalizing adults having pictures of their own naked children and still having them years later, and
Or
and
even
that,
pictures of themselves
or even
as
pictures of
children.
themselves. Yes, yes. There was a guy, I think it was in the United States, was who served several years in jail for possession of child porn. He was 19 and had a video of himself when he was 14 and who was jacking off. So yeah, technically it was child porn, but I don't think it's forbidden for 14-year-olds to record themselves. Last time I checked, I could be wrong about that, but who knows. Um, so yeah, I mean, and in the age of instant videotaping, because now everyone has a camera in his pocket, and most even in poorer countries, but definitely in middle income and high income countries, everyone has a professional TV camera in his pocket, because these new phones can record at a remarkably high quality. So everyone can produce a very, very good video instantly at any moment for any reason. So that means when teenagers do what, well, back in my days, we would write kinky stuff. In these days, you send a picture of kinky stuff. That's that's the way it is. So these kinds of laws will eventually tend to make everyone worse off. And I don't think they protect anyone, and that's usually that's what happens. I hope Norway can avoid that almost unavoidable trend, but I don't think it can.
It also has a very lamentable effect of making lots of people into criminals, even though they
Yes.
haven't done anything that's actually harmful. And that's, of course, most of these people are never going to be charged for these crimes, but it means that anytime someone in a position of power doesn't like you, they can always find some sort of actual crime that they've committed, um, even if it's just a possession of child porn of yourself or something like that. And this way, a lot of abuse of power is possible.
Yes, and if you look on, if you open that link, well, on one of the related links, there is another article detailing a higher operation of this kind, this time Europe-wide. According to that article, only Czechia and I think Malta are the only two countries where no arrests have been made. Otherwise, in every country from stretching from Ukraine to Portugal and from Norway to Italy, has had at least one or two arrests in a transnational pedophile ring. I looked up for the continuation of that Europol investigation. Guess what? The overwhelming majority of them have already been released, and the charges dropped. And the projection is that all of them will be released and the charges be dropped. That was in August. And if you look at that video, it focuses, of course, on Germany because it's on Deutsche Welle. That article has a video on it, and the at least that video already discusses that. It has a few social democrat politicians there say, oh, it is a serious thing that possessing images of naked children is not considered a crime in Germany, as it's not almost anywhere in Europe, actually, not yet anyway. And the same thing, they don't seem to realize that passing such a law would make a lot of innocent people into criminals because potato.
Yeah, the problem is making these kinds of arguments takes a bit of time to explain, whereas the other people on the other side have just to say, think of the children, we have to protect the children. That's a very easy, salient argument you can make in 10 seconds. Um, explaining the opposite case takes a couple of minutes. And
Yes, yes.
it's sort of about more abstract notions like privacy and protecting the rule of law and so on. And these things are not as salient as protecting the children, and that's a huge problem in a democracy.
True, true, and it is generally a huge problem that, well, I know you don't like it, but that conservatives have, because what we're doing here is a conservative argument. Let's let things the way they are now because they're better than the way you're proposing, and that's an enormous problem for any conservative argument, because and also because we cannot really point to evidence, because the fact that we don't have these retarded laws, Germany doesn't have them, Romania doesn't have them, we cannot prove how many people were left alone by the government. They were just left alone. So we have to make the abstract case of why and how things would go wrong under a stricter legislation, which indeed is very hard, and it is emotionally, it is especially hard in an emotionally charged conversation.
Yeah, and the problem is that when it comes to politics, people tend to think emotionally. They don't really put in the effort uh, of trying to understand things, or trying to understand arguments the other side makes. But it's just much easier to just cheer for your team and switch off your brain.
Yes, but this is particularly emotionally charged. I mean, it's a difference when we're discussing, I don't know, taxation policy, or I don't know whether there should be an extra bureau for, I don't know, handing out CDs or not. I mean, and it's a whole different thing when we're discussing quote unquote protecting the children. I mean, when you the second you say children, everyone freaks out. And again, for good reason. I mean, the instincts are there for a very good reason. The intention is very good most of the time. Although I don't suspect politicians are that, but the advocates of such measures usually are well intended. They just happen to be wrong.
Yeah, but whether you're right or wrong doesn't much matter. It matters whether you can make a strong argument that is easy to understand by someone um, who hasn't thought about the issue for more than a couple of minutes at most.
Hmm. Hmm.
And unfortunately, when you're in favor of abstract values like liberty or privacy, that is much harder to make short, salient arguments.
Yes, it is much harder, but we should nevertheless try. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to include this thing here too is because the internet, at least some sections of it, are embroiled into a very large scale investigation, the Pizzagate thingy. And again, it seems to me that the that one is also driven by essentially a pedohysteria instinct.
Yeah, and it's this sort of conspiracy theory stuff with all these lots of pieces of supposed evidence, but even uh, but none of these comes even close to being any sort of strong piece of evidence. It's all these sort of supposed codes that might mean something, but probably they're just harmless references to pizza, or maybe if even if they're code, who knows that the code is actually code for pedophilia. Maybe it's just code for something entirely different that is entirely harmless, or maybe not harmless, but something
Harmless in a
uh,
different way.
that is harmful in a very different way. Yeah.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, most of those would lead to to some sort of occult practices. And by the way, that's a lot more likely. I mean, it's not unheard of politicians to be involved in various forms of occult practices. Now, since I'm an atheist, I don't believe those have any effect. They're just silly. But nevertheless, being part of the occult is at best, no, at worst, politically disadvantageous to be exposed to the public that you are part of the occult. But other than that, it's not harmful in any way. I mean, whatever, do whatever floats your boat. But then again, if they would have come up with that argument, that would be a little bit worn off. I mean, the quote unquote conspiracies of politicians being part of the occult are no longer fashionable. On the other hand, the conspiracies that politicians and men in positions of power are allegedly part of pedophile rings, these are also even older types of conspiracies. I mean, these kinds of conspiracies have been existing since forever. I mean, I think I've told you about the Swedish police digging up entire forests to to find bodies of children allegedly raped and killed in satanic rituals by strong men, strong lawyers, strong politicians in Sweden. Of course, nothing of that ever turned out to be true. Even several forests later dug up. But nevertheless, I mean, and that was a pedo hysteria whipped out by a radical misandrist feminist. Her name was Eva Lundgren. She was Norwegian, but she made a career in Sweden, of course, because she was too feminist for Norway, but good enough for Sweden. And yeah, that was the kind of pedo history. This happened during 91, 95. It lasted for 4 years, in the sense that the police wasted resources for 4 years trying to prove anything of her stories to be even remotely connected to reality. And of course, they failed miserably because there was nothing there. Um, and that's why but nevertheless, the that particular moment ended up with the state giving more power to the quote unquote domestic violence shelters in Sweden, and to the organization ROX in particular, which is basically the national organization for Swedish women and girls, I think, Riksorganisationen för kvinnor och tjejer. Yeah, something like that. And using that power, actual child abuse emerged, with young girls being literally kidnapped from their families, to be taken to be saved by their alleged oppression of their fathers, and then the fathers having to work several weeks to try to find their daughters and bring them back home, and so on and so forth. That particular hysteria was whipped up more or less. It ended up with more power for feminists. This time might end up with more power for various surveillance agencies.
Yeah, never let a crisis go to waste, even if it's just a fake crisis.
Yes, yes.
And at least you're raising awareness of this serious problem of child abuse and pedophilia.
No
So
one denies that child abuse and pedophilia are serious problems. It's just that they're not really, especially pedophilia is not really such a widespread phenomenon. It's bad when it happens, and of course, pedos should be buried under the jail. But it's not really that widespread, and it can't be. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the sort of, these attraction to children thingy is a very rare uh, disorder that emerges within individuals. I mean, it can't be that often. And if it had been, we would have had a much more troubled history as a human race.
yeah, though of course sometimes it's confounded by attraction to teenagers, which is not the same as pedophilia, and
Oh yeah, true. Some
some,
countries,
especially in the Anglosphere, where
yes,
age of consent is something like 16 or higher usually.
higher,
It's not
yes,
something even 18 in some parts of the US, which is just insane.
yes,
And being attracted to a 17-year-old is not pedophilia. It's just normal human behavior.
yes, yes. There is a case with a woman. She's now 34 or something. But when she was 28, she was having she started an affair with a 16-year-old young man, and she had to eventually apply for refugee status in Canada because she was sentenced to 30 years in jail for pedophilia in Florida. In Florida, the age of consent is 17. And surprise, surprise, when her lover turned 18, moved with her in Canada. I think they still live together now. And last time I looked into the case, it was almost a year ago, and they were still living together. So yeah, when I say pedophilia, I actually mean it in the clinical sense: attraction to prepubescent children, 11 or younger, or 12 or younger. Uh, no, the mainstream understanding of the phenomenon is incredibly insane. No, as an 18-year-old having sex with a 14-year-old is not pedophilia. You may think it's morally wrong, that's fine, but it's not the same thing as abuse. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, the next one is really weird.
Next one is from the slightly silly place. This is from horizont.net. Lidl replaces Santa Claus with Santa Clara. Following Edeka, Rewe, Penny, and others, Lidl has now announced their Christmas campaign for 2016. The discount supermarket is tackling a socially relevant topic which received a large amount of media attention in 2016: the gender debate. The idea is this: the time leading up to Christmas is especially stressful and hectic for women, but in the end, the laurels go to Santa Claus. Quote, "This is not only unjust, but also anachronistic. After all, the issue of gender equalization is at the top of the priority list the world over. Christmas should not be an exception," opines Jo Marie Favik, owner of the creative collective Überground. She and her team are behind the elaborate presentation, which was revealed today. That Lidl entrusted such an important campaign to Überground, a small Hamburg-based agency, rather than their new lead agency BBDO, is not the only surprise. The performance's tonality also stands in clear contrast to other, more sentimental ads. Überground do not convey the message through exuberant emotions or finger-wagging, but through catchy hip-hop beats and a humorous image film. The hashtag Santa Clara song uh, is to be an anthem for all Santa Claras around the world who need, quote, a little power and appreciation on Christmas, Favik said. She wants Santa Clara to be an ambassador for a somewhat more laid-back Christmas season and to remind people that not everything needs to be perfect. Then it goes on towards more business-related stuff that's not really relevant um, to our show. So
Not everything has to be perfect. Okay, then leave Santa Claus alone. I mean, I agree with them. Yeah, not everything has to be perfect. Santa Claus is a white man. Get over it. In all seriousness, what the fuck is this? Yummy Yummy asks in the chat room, what does Santa Clara give you when you're bad?
I don't know, probably a spanking unless you're in the UK.
Well, it's okay in the UK too, as long as it's not on videotape. And you
Okay,
don't,
okay.
if you don't distribute it. So, well, you can still distribute it. So Santa Clara can give you a spanking in Germany and then sell it in because it's not law yet. So. Yeah, I looked at that video. I don't think it's humorous. I mean, it's
Yeah, it's not humorous in the least. It's just the same old story of men being incompetent buffoons and lazy, and women are capable and smart and strong and something.
yeah. I mean, it has the sense of humor of Jessica Valenti. And the reason Jessica Valenti came to my mind as you were reading, sorry, as you were reading the article, is because Jessica Valenti wrote last year, if you remember, one of her special columns where she was making the exact same argument that Christmas is a lot more stressful for women, and she was lamenting the fact that she has to pack, has to make to pack gifts basically. So yeah, I mean, it just sounds like Jessica Valenti was hired as a PR consultant by Lidl. I hope for their sake that's not the case, and I hope for their sake that they don't push the same narrative into other little subsidiaries across Europe. Because if they try to pull this shit in Poland, they're out of the country. It's really that simple. I mean, if you try to insult Christmas in Poland, you're out of the country. It doesn't matter who you are. So I really hope for their sake that it's not Jessica Valenti that's doing their PR consultancy. Amazing. Also, who the hell are these Ubercount? The creative collective sounds lefty.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a collective in the lefty sense, but it's just I guess some sort of uh, group that does apparently hip hop videos and whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
They're completely unknown to me, and I don't think any known person has heard of them either. I can't really say I'm following the German hip hop scene, so I wouldn't know. But it seems that they're relatively unknown.
okay. Now, I'm all for making more modernist thingies for with Christmas and whatnot, but uh, whenever you bring ideology into Christmas, is really yeah. The commies tried the same thing back in the days in the former Eastern Bloc. We weren't supposed to say Santa Claus. We were supposed to say, oh crap, I don't know how the translation is in English, but basically Father Cold. And Father Cold was living in the Soviet Union, of course, not in Finland. And it was a whole clusterfuck. And of course, the whole thing, you have to say Happy Seasons instead of Merry Christmas because Merry Christmas is bad and things like that. Now, of course, it wasn't widely respected because most of the populace was like, yeah, the commies are insane. But nevertheless, every time when you try to bring ideology into Christmas, it tends to go bad.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's already this Christian ideology associated with it, but that's already over the years has really faded. And I mean, people typically go to church on Christmas, but that's just about all the Christian significance this holiday really has.
Yeah, do they still go there? Because here, almost nobody goes to church on Christmas. But then again, it's usually only a tiny minority of people that still go to uh, church during Christmas season. It's usually quite secular and usually quite ideology free, precisely because for 50 years commies brought in their ideology into it, and everyone was like, "Can we please have our Christmas and eat some very nice food and have time with our families, and please just leave us the fuck alone? Maybe that would be fantastic."
Yeah, at least where I live, I think I would say that most people do go to church on Christmas Eve, or possibly on Christmas Day.
Hmm. Okay, fair enough. But nevertheless, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the reason, and this is my problem with political activists and atheists who usually tend to sue governments because of a nativity scene and things like that. This usually happens every time in every Christmas. Some equality Nazi somewhere or some the degenerate atheist somewhere sues a government because he or she is offended and excluded and marginalized by a nativity scene or by something that's related to Christmas, or they try to bastardize it by introducing political activism into Christmas carols and things like that. That's just something that you don't do. I mean, it's why would you do that? But then again, I mean, if this affects the sales on Lidl, because if there's anything to be said about this company is that they're very pragmatic. They try something, and if it goes wrong, they never do it again. So if it affects their sales or it attracts a significant amount of criticism, then they won't do it again.
Yeah, I also very much doubt that this campaign is going to be successful, and I don't think we're going to hear much more about Santa Clara.
Yeah, and it's also very interesting that it has to be a message for all the Santa Claras in the world. What, all three of them in your hometown? Because
I guess.
they're putting the cart before the horses, basically.
Yeah, but what they mean is basically all the hardworking women uh, on Christmas.
Eh, yeah, I guess you could classify it like that. Anyway, silly topic. Let's go to the next one.
Okay, the next one is from Spiegel. Trio of teenagers said to have taken justice in into their own brutal hands. A 17-year-old is accused of having invented a rape to get revenge. She and two of her friends then allegedly tortured and almost killed the supposed perpetrator. The case is being heard at the State Court of Münster. According to the prosecution, in May of this year, the girl used a pretense to lure her supposed tormentor to the Dortmund-Ems channel near Lüdinghausen. There, the 18-year-old boy was allegedly attacked by the 17-year-old's friends, who also stand accused. They then proceeded to abuse him for several hours. The 17-year-old is said to have met her future victim through a flirting app 1 week before the incident. According to her statement, they had quickly become intimate. The very same day, she had related this to her ex-boyfriend and another friend, but had portrayed it as a rape. In court, she started backtracking. Quote, "Back then it felt like a rape, but I did participate willingly." According to the 17-year-old's confession, the issue quickly got out of hand. Quote, "Where does the bastard live?" her friends are supposed to have said. In the end, they armed themselves with pepper spray, a truncheon, equipment to tie him up, and a sharp box cutter, and resolved to lure the 18-year-old into an ambush at the canal. The young man from Münster was allegedly overpowered by the 17-year-old's two masked friends, who then beat him and tied him up. Quote, "We kicked his head and I also kicked between his legs, the defendant said. In addition, she had put out a cigarette on the victim's bare skin and had tortured the 18-year-old with a heated up and sharpened can and with a box cutter. When the victim finally begged for mercy, the situation supposedly escalated completely. Quote, I told him that I couldn't let him go because otherwise he'd just run to the police, the 17-year-old told the judges. One of the co-defendants then allegedly said, we have to finish him off, so we have to finish this here and now. Thus, they allegedly put a belt around the victim's throat and pulled from both sides. Only after they heard the nearby steps of pedestrians did they run away. The victim was then brought to hospital with life-threatening cuts. The young man had lost almost 3 liters of blood. The charge is attempted murder.
This is one of those moments when I regret that there is such thing as legal protection for minors. I mean, it's and I also thank the lucky stars that such protections don't exist in this country. Starting from the age of 14, you're fair game for life imprisonment for such nonsense, which I think is fair. But then again, I mean, I just hope they don't get away lightly because they're girls. That's my only hope of this case, which
No,
probably they will.
the two friends are both male. Sorry, that got lost in translation, I guess.
Okay, then I hope the
They're both male.
initiator doesn't get. If those two are guys, then they're definitely not going to get away easily with this. But the initiator, the instigator, because this is basically a case of violence by proxy, both direct and violence by proxy. I hope she doesn't get away easily because she's a girl, which I think she will.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, these two guys at least had the excuse that they thought they were enacting revenge um, for their friend who had supposedly been raped. But she doesn't have that excuse. I mean, she knows she wasn't raped.
Mhm.
She knows she made that thing up. Um, there's really no excuse at all for her, and um, it's really going to be interesting to see how the sentences are going to be, and whether she gets a harsher sentence than the boys, which of course should definitely happen. But whether it's actually going to happen, I have my doubts.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Can we make a petition to have the case judged in a court in this country with my favorite female judge? I can guarantee it's going to be a very fair trial, uh, but but that's the extent that I can go. This is one of those instances where where I'm a strong advocate for more women into the system, because everywhere it's been tried, it turns out that the sentences are significantly fairer when it comes to female criminals and not noticeably higher or lower for male criminals. So the sex of the judge will matter. If if the trial will be adjudicated by a male judge, she'll get off easily. If it will be adjudicated by a female judge, there is a high chance she'll not go off that easy. And then again, there is those minor protections, which I think they're harsher in Germany than here. Basically, under 18-year-olds are harder to prosecute or something like that. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, under 18. Also, if you're between 18 and 21, you might still be tried as a minor.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
which I think is insane, but yeah, whatever.
so since she's 17, she's definitely going to be tried as a minor. Um, and then the maximum possible penalty, I think, is 10 years in a juvenile facility. And this is almost certainly going to get considerably less than that, I think.
Hmm.
So I don't know what the verdict will be. Um, but yeah, it's almost certainly not going to be as harsh as it should be.
Hmm. Hmm. What's interesting, well, it's not really interesting. We've been knowing and talking about this for years. Is that how easily were prepared for her friends to enact violence, basically in her name, and with her in this case, uh, just because she says so.
Yeah,
So much for that patriarchy and male privilege and the not believing the victims and all of that nonsense.
Yeah, and maybe even it might even be the case that this sort of thing gets more likely because of this whole rape culture narrative, because of this whole idea that um, rapists almost always get away with it, and um, that the chances of getting convicted are almost zero. If you believe that, it might make some sense to take justice into your own hands, um, if there's an actual rape.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, and not to mention, I don't know if this is true yet in Germany. It will definitely be true soon enough, but I don't know if it's true yet now. But some schools in multiple parts of Europe have started teaching that very narrative to teenagers, basically. So there, and even if these individuals themselves might not have been subjected to it through school, but they probably heard of it, probably were aware of it. um, this kind of thing would produce enormous amount of negative effects over the long run, even when feminism will become much less socially acceptable than it is now. The effects of these kinds of nasty ideas will keep on lingering, and it will keep on producing negative societal effects.
Yeah, there was always also in the news in Germany another case that's sort of similar, where there was um, also two teenagers, I don't know, 17, 18 or something, who slept together, and she accused him of rape, and then um, one of her friends uh, visited the supposed rapist, and attacked him, and cut him in the face with a knife, with two slashes, but nothing life threatening. And he was also just sentenced, I think this week, and he got away with, I think it was, he had to pay 3,000 euros in damages, and had to do some community service, and a suspended sentence for 6 months. Um, and
Which is
the
basically nothing. Yeah,
Yeah, and the false rape accuser got away completely scot free. Um,
amazing.
and yeah, that's quite
Amazing.
sad.
Yeah, it is. It is, and sadly, there are quite a lot of youngsters in particular who do believe in this kind of nonsense, and some of them will act out. It's the basic rule with any kind of radical ideology. Whenever you spread very radical ideas that are just completely not true, uh, yes, some of them will keep their extremism on Tumblr, but some of them will lash out at everyone else. It just depends on the right. I should probably avoid saying the right trigger, but uh, it basically is like that. Some of them will lash out, and when they do, you get these kinds of cases.
Yep.
All right, let's go to amazingly efficient we were. Let's go to the last one, which is a follow up of a very recurring story about Norway. Coming from Aftenposten, men and women shall have the same right to protection against cancer. For 8 years, only the girls got it. Now we finally have the boys who are also getting the vaccine that may protect men against the cancer of penis, anus, mouth, and throat. It's 8 years since the girls were first offered free HPV vaccine in the Norwegian childhood vaccination program. So far, over 170,000 girls in the seventh grade accepted a vaccine that can prevent cervical cancer and other diseases caused by the human papilloma virus, the HPV. From November 1st, also women born between 1991 to 1996 have been offered the HPV vaccine. In many countries, there has been seen a decline in serious precarious lesions. In addition, genital warts are virtually extinct in the vaccinated cohort. Now it's the boys' turn. Earlier this year, both the Public Health Authority and the Prioritization Council made a recommendation that boys should also get the same opportunity to protection as girls. The reasons for the recommendation was one, the number of cases of cancer caused by HPV in men is increasing. Two, boys and girls should be given the same protection, should be offered the same protection against cancer caused by HPV. And three, in addition, both boys and girls take responsibility to avoid infecting others with the virus that can cause cancer. Vaccination of boys, as well as vaccination of girls, will be the most effective way to prevent HPV infection. We achieve the best protection when the infection chain is broken in both joints. Vaccinating boys would also provide protection to the group of men who have sex with men. The Institute of Public Health said that the rise of HPV disease indicate that both boys and girls should be given the opportunity to individual protection. The difference today is unfortunate because we are talking about serious illness and risk of death. Recently, Health Minister Bent Höie asked the Public Health Authority to announce a gender-neutral um, program to get the lowest price on the vaccine program offer, basically, to have an auction, which is being conducted for all vaccines in the childhood immunization program. The Knowledge Center has published a report which concludes that there are health benefits and it is economically cost effective to provide the vaccine to both sexes given the proper vaccine price. Now, the Kunskapscentret, the Knowledge Center, is essentially shorthand for Nationalt Kunskapscenter for Helsetjenesten, or the Norwegian Knowledge Center for Health Services. Anyway, men can get cancer of the penis, anus, mouth, and throat. There is no screening program for cancers caused by HPV in men. The cancer is detected, therefore, often too late. Treatment of advanced cancer is costly and involves a significantly reduced quality of life and high risk of early death. The lack of screening means vaccination is, in practice, the only way we can effectively prevent cancer caused by HPV in men. If he approves it, it will be possible to introduce the gender-neutral HPV vaccination scheme to children in the 7th grade starting from the autumn of 2017. The vaccine has also the effect in boys. No, the vaccine has also been proposed. No, the vaccine must be proposed to be offered to boys in the 8th grade and up, but it has so far not been planned to do so. Anything in terms of retrieval vaccination of older boys, as it is now being done for 20 to 21-year-old young women. It is therefore important that boys who fall outside of the public vaccination program to be given the opportunity to get vaccinated, even if they have to pay it for themselves. More and more boys have opted in recent years to buy vaccine for protection against genital warts and cancer. HPV vaccine has been proven to be very effective. Follow-up studies show sustained positive effect of the vaccine even 10 years after vaccination. The Cancer Registry has so far not received reports of cervical cancer in women who have received the HPV vaccine. This will mean significant savings in treatment costs of genital wounds, HPV-related cancers, and precancerous these in the future, both in women and men. Skipping a bit. With the knowledge that we have about the HPV vaccine today and what it will mean for the Norwegian public health, both in the short term and long term, the Minister of Health must approve the funding. By going to the 2-dosage vaccination scheme of both of the sexes, we will have no budgetary implications for 2017. Men and women have the same right to protection against cancer. It's time for gender-neutral HPV vaccination in Norway. So they actually do it.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah, it is. It is good news. If you remember a year or something ago, it was at the level of advocacy articles written in very tiny publications. They kept on pushing it. 4 months ago, it was finally picked up by a more mainstream publication. We read about that, and apparently now it's almost ready to be policy.
Yep. Yeah, and of course, the whole thing about vaccination is that it just works much better if most of the population is vaccinated than if just a couple of people are vaccinated.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing with especially this is the case right now in Norway is that um, you have to if you are a man and want to get the vaccine, you have to effectively break the law, or simply live somewhere else for 2 weeks or something, because you can't legally buy it. Um, Even if you're willing to pay for it, you can't legally buy it, and you can't legally then go to a hospital and say, please administer this to me. If you have to do it either by yourself or contract it in a hospital in some other country, preferably Denmark, because they have a more lax regime about these things.
That's insane.
It is. It is. In this country, at the very least, that's what I paid for my own, because it wasn't and still isn't available for men. But at the very least, if you can buy it, there is no problem in administering it, and it's nothing illegal to have it. Especially 1 or 2 doses, no one cares. But in Norway, they do care. You can actually go to jail for uh, medicine trafficking, something like that. There's a very long word that's the calls the crime. But yeah.
That is quite insane.
Yeah, but then again, this is the country that was lauded for tremendous economic progress because they legalized private hospitals a few years ago. So and again, 10 years ago, or no, actually more than 10 years ago, 13, 14 years ago, when Reinfeldt was still prime minister in Sweden, it was very socially acceptable and pretty much true to say about Norway that it is the last Soviet state of Europe. That's how controlled the economy was in pretty much anything. And again, in 2012, no, sorry, 2013, it was the first time after 45 years when a right-wing government was elected. And it was elected on a platform of we're going to cut back on regulation, cut back on taxes. Everything is just out of control, which they did. I mean, let's be completely fair with the Madam Prime Minister. Funny thing, the first female leader of Norway is also a right winger. It just seems that those pesky right wingers keep on producing the historical firsts that the left claims to want to. But yeah, this is one of the areas where I would rather. I mean, if it has to be a public health authority, this is the kind of thing that they should be dealing with. Uh, Vaccination programs, things like this that don't cost a lot, but they do have a high degree of efficiency, and they can actually be economically efficient too. I mean, it's one thing to buy 2 doses of vaccine, and a whole different thing to buy 200,000 doses. So yeah.
Yeah, there's also a reasonable economic case made for that, because there's positive externalities for vaccinations, because you're not just protecting yourself if you get vaccinated, you also protect other people from being infected by you. It's a external benefit, a benefit provided to other people, and so if you had to buy vaccinations privately, you would not get some vaccinations which are socially profitable get, but not personally. So say that the benefit that the vaccination gives you is on average, say, 100 euros, and the benefit that the rest of society gets is also 100 euros. Then if the vaccination costs 150 euros, then you probably won't get it. But it would be sensible for the government to subsidize it, or to just pay it outright, and that way actually improve economic efficiency. Whether the government's program is going to be as efficient as a private vaccination program could be is, of course, unknown. But at least in this case, there's a chance that the government could actually do a better job than the market.
Yeah, the main problem again with Norway is that even if you want to have it, you just can't, unless you're, and especially it's problematic. I mean, if you live in Oslo, it's not a problem. There's very low cost, very cheap airplanes to København, to Copenhagen, so it's not really an issue if you really wanted to. But if you live all the way up north in Tromsø, it's just incredibly expensive just to get to a place where you can do it legally. It's just madness.
Yeah, also vast majority of people are not going to care to go on a plane trip just to get this vaccination. There's a very few people who would go to that kind of trouble.
Yeah, well, I got into trouble with with the customs agency because I ordered it, and they weren't the post office, the customs post office wasn't willing to release it because why would I order it? Well, because I can't find it on the local market because regulations. Well, what a surprise. Uh, but yeah, I mean, this was quite a few years ago, and it was a lot harder. Now it's incredibly easy if you wanted to pay for it yourself. If with the state subsidizing it, there's still a long way to go. Almost everywhere in Europe, Norway would be the first one to actually implement it. In Britain, I think it's our friend Mr. Lloyd who's making the case for this. He started the lobbying group about this.
Yep.
All right, we're almost to what 95 minutes. Not bad,
Yep.
not bad. Well, I'm kind of out of smart and dumb things to say, so
I have a moderately smart thing to say, which is to take the red pill.
take the red pill. Goodbye, everyone. Hold on a second, James. Next week I can't be here because I have no internet where I'll be on December 2. But on December 9, for sure, I'll be able to broadcast from the middle of nowhere.
Okay, then I guess see you in 2 weeks.
Yep, yep.
Goodbye, everyone.